Can you believe it? Across the world, one of the most basic human needs, a roof over our heads, has quietly transformed into one of the greatest financial challenges of our time. For centuries, shelter has been considered not only a necessity, but also a foundation of stability and dignity. Yet, today, millions of people in both developed and developing nations are discovering that owning or even renting a decent home is slipping further and further out of reach. This is not just about personal finance, but about the way entire societies function. The story of housing has become the story of inequality, of economic forces colliding with human dreams, and of cities that appear vibrant on the surface while hiding severe cracks beneath. If food feeds our bodies, then housing feeds our sense of security. And if that security is taken away, what does that mean for the future of our societies? Over the next half hour, we will take a journey across continents from London to Hong Kong, from New York to Sydney, to examine the roots of the housing crisis and why this has become one of the defining issues of the 21st century. Let's begin in London, a city once regarded as the heart of the modern world. London's skyline tells the story of ambition, with glass towers reflecting the dreams of global finance and historical landmarks whispering of centuries past. But behind that glitter lies a quieter tragedy. In London today, the average home costs more than 12 times the average salary. To put that in perspective, economists generally consider housing affordable if it costs no more than 3 times annual income. This gap is not just wide, it is a chasm. For young Londoners, the dream of buying a first home has all but vanished. Even renting has become a nightmare, with monthly rents consuming more than half of many workers' income. Entire generations are trapped in what economists call generation rent, unable to save for the future because so much of their paycheck disappears into the hands of landlords. London's housing crisis reflects the global trend of homes transforming from places to live into financial assets. Properties are bought by wealthy investors, often overseas, not to live in, but to park money safely. Many luxury apartments stand empty, while working families struggle to find even the smallest flats. It is a paradox. Plenty of buildings, yet not enough homes. Now shift your eyes nearly 6,000 miles east to Hong Kong, often described as the world's most unaffordable housing market. Here, the numbers become almost surreal. The average home in Hong Kong costs more than 20 times the median household income. Imagine working for 2 decades without spending a single dollar on anything else just to afford a small apartment. In Hong Kong, many families live in spaces so tiny they have been nicknamed coffin homes. Rooms barely large enough for a bed, sometimes without windows, stacked inside crowded buildings. For young people, even these spaces are difficult to afford, yet developers continue building high-end towers aimed at wealthy elites and mainland Chinese investors. The contrast between shining skyscrapers and cramped cages has become one of the city's most bitter realities. And yet, Hong Kong is not alone. It is merely the sharpest example of a pattern repeating across the globe. Cross the Pacific, and you arrive in the United States, a country that once prided itself on the dream of homeownership. After World War II, affordable suburban houses with white picket fences symbolized the American dream. But today, that dream feels more like an illusion. In cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York, home prices have soared to levels beyond the reach of ordinary workers. The median home price in San Francisco exceeds $1.3 million, while average rents in New York have topped $4,000 a month in many neighborhoods. At the same time, the US has witnessed a surge in homelessness. More than 650,000 Americans are officially counted as homeless, and advocates argue the real number is far higher. Tents line sidewalks in Los Angeles, and entire encampments have sprung up in many cities. The American housing crisis is a mixture of shortages, speculative investment, restrictive zoning laws, and decades of underbuilding. In some cities, it takes years to get approval for new construction, which keeps supply far below demand. Meanwhile, institutional investors such as hedge funds and private equity firms have entered the housing market, buying thousands of homes not to live in but to rent out for profit, further pushing up costs. In Canada, the picture is eerily similar. Toronto and Vancouver consistently rank among the most expensive housing markets in the world. In Vancouver, the median home price is over 12 times the average household income, nearly matching London. Young Canadians have coined phrases like house poor and forever renter to describe their situation. Foreign investment, especially from China, has often been blamed, but the deeper issue lies in supply. Canada adds fewer homes per capita than most OECD nations, despite rapid population growth. In 2023, Canada's population grew by nearly 3% in a single year, largely due to immigration, yet housing construction did not keep pace. This has created political tension, with debates over whether immigration should be slowed or housing policy reformed. For many Canadians, the frustration is not just financial but psychological. The feeling that no matter how hard they work, the possibility of owning a home is slipping further away. Turn south toward Australia, and you will hear the same cries. Sydney and Melbourne have become two of the least affordable cities on earth. In Sydney, the average home price now hovers near 15 times the average income. Housing has become a form of intergenerational inequality. Older Australians who bought homes decades ago sit on properties worth millions, while younger generations face near impossible odds. Renters compete fiercely for apartments, sometimes offering to pay months of rent up front just to secure a place. The Australian housing crisis is fueled by speculation, tax incentives for property investors, and limited land release. For many young Australians, the only way to enter the housing market is through what is known as the Bank of Mum and Dad, meaning financial help from their parents. Without that, ownership is nearly impossible. But this crisis is not confined to the English-speaking world. In Germany, a country traditionally known for affordable rents, the situation has deteriorated rapidly. Berlin, once famous for being a haven for artists and students, has seen rents double in just a decade. The city attempted a rent cap law in 2020, freezing rents for 5 years, but it was struck down by Germany's constitutional court. This left tenants frustrated and landlords emboldened. Protests filled Berlin's streets with slogans demanding that housing should not be a commodity, but a human right. In the Netherlands, Amsterdam faces similar struggles. Shortages of affordable homes have driven up rents, and young people often remain in their parents' houses well into their 30s. The Dutch government has debated drastic measures, including limiting short-term rentals, such as Airbnb, which remove apartments from the long-term rental market. Even in Japan, where population decline has led to millions of vacant homes, known as IKEA, the picture is complex. While rural houses can be purchased for astonishingly low prices, sometimes just a few $1,000s, major cities like Tokyo and Osaka remain expensive. The paradox is striking. Empty houses rot in the countryside, while urban workers pay sky-high rents for cramped apartments. Cultural preferences, employment concentration in big cities, and legal hurdles prevent easy redistribution of housing. Japan shows us that the housing crisis is not always about too few homes, but sometimes about homes being in the wrong places. Scandinavia, often admired for its social policies, is not immune either. In Stockholm, demand for apartments has outstripped supply to such an extent that waiting lists for rent-controlled apartments can stretch more than a decade. Families sometimes register their newborn children for housing queues, hoping they will secure an apartment by adulthood. In Norway and Denmark, rising interest rates have made mortgages significantly more expensive, pushing many households to the brink. Even in wealthy welfare states, housing is proving to be a challenge that governments cannot easily solve. What lies behind this global crisis? Economists point to several overlapping causes. First, there is a supply problem. Across much of the world, governments have failed to build enough homes to match population growth. Urban planning laws, environmental restrictions, and community resistance, sometimes described as NIMBYism, or not in my backyard, prevent new housing projects from moving forward. In cities like San Francisco, it can take a decade of legal battles just to approve a new apartment block. Second, there is the issue of speculation. Housing has become a financial asset class. Investors, both domestic and international, buy properties not to live in, but to profit from. This reduces the supply available to actual residents and drives prices higher. Third, global monetary policy plays a role. Years of ultra-low interest rates encouraged borrowing and pushed money into real estate, inflating bubbles. When interest rates rise, as they have recently, monthly mortgage costs skyrocket, trapping households between unaffordable rents and unaffordable mortgages. Beyond economics, there is a social dimension. Housing inequality is reshaping societies. Wealthy elites accumulate multiple properties, while ordinary workers struggle to find a single home. Generational divides deepen, with younger people feeling locked out of the market, while older homeowners watch their property values climb. In some cities, this has created a hollowing effect. Teachers, nurses, and essential workers cannot afford to live near their workplaces. Communities lose diversity, and cities risk becoming playgrounds for the rich and empty shells for everyone else. The cultural consequences are profound. In Hong Kong, the Coffin homes are not just about physical discomfort, but about dignity. In London, young professionals sharing small flats far from the city centre feel a growing sense of alienation. In Los Angeles, sprawling tent cities highlight the gap between Hollywood glamour and everyday reality. The housing crisis is more than a financial chart. It is visible on the streets, in the lives of ordinary people, and in the silent despair of those who feel left behind, and the future. Climate change adds a new layer of uncertainty. Rising sea levels threaten coastal cities like Miami and Jakarta. Wildfires in California and Australia destroy thousands of homes in an instant. Flooding in Germany and Pakistan shows how vulnerable housing stock is becoming. Insurance costs are soaring, making some homes uninsurable and therefore unsellable. Climate risks could transform today's expensive properties into tomorrow's stranded assets. Meanwhile, technology is both a potential savior and a disruptor. Modular construction, 3D printed homes, and new building materials promise cheaper and faster solutions, but adoption remains slow. So where does this leave us? Are homes simply doomed to remain unaffordable luxuries, or is there a way forward? Some countries are experimenting with bold ideas. In Vienna, Austria, the city owns or manages nearly half of its housing stock, keeping rents relatively stable and affordable. Singapore has built an extensive public housing system where more than 80% of citizens live in government-built apartments, often of high quality. These models show that with strong political will, solutions exist. But they require societies to treat housing not just as a commodity, but as a public good. As we reflect on London's unaffordable flats, Hong Kong's coffin homes, America's sprawling tent encampments, and Vancouver's sky-high condos, one theme emerges. Housing is not just an economic issue, but a moral one. It asks us what kind of societies we want to build. Do we accept that homes are just chips in a global financial casino? Or do we insist that they remain the foundation of stable, dignified lives? The answer will shape not just our cities, but our futures. So, next time you walk down a street filled with skyscrapers, glittering apartments, or quiet suburban homes, ask yourself, how many of these are truly homes, and how many are just investments? The global housing crisis is not happening somewhere far away. It is happening everywhere, quietly eroding the stability of middle classes. reshaping politics, and redefining the very meaning of home. And the most unsettling part is that unless decisive action is taken, the crisis will not resolve itself. It will deepen, spreading cracks not just through buildings, but through the very foundations of our societies.